So, Mr. President, why did you fire Director Comey?
Wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
Did it affect your meeting with the Russians today?
Excuse me?
Did it affect your meeting with the Russians today?
Nope. So Comey, no longer his homie. And Mr. Trump does it again, flipping more scripts than a coked-up screenwriter. Look what he's done to the Democrats.
Donald Trump has tried to put himself above the law. And that's not how it works in America.
This is not just a scandal. The president's actions are neither Republican nor Democratic. They're authoritarian.
We have a deeply insecure president who understands that the noose is tightening because of this Russia investigation, and that's why I believe he has let Jim Comey go.
There's a winner. Now, this is the same crew that wanted Comey gone. So Trump does what they asked for, and now they hate it. It reminds me when someone says, hey, I think I'm going to take up jogging, and you say, hey, I'll join you after work, and then they say, I really didn't mean it. That's the Democrats. They damned Comey, and out of bipartisan benevolence, Trump grants them their wish, which is why their stuttering outrage over his firing makes them look two-faced, which now requires twice as much Botox. But what about the firing itself? Let's separate the action from its execution. The act, defensible. The execution, flawed. He could have let him go in August when half the media are drunk picking sand from their navel. No one would have noticed. He could have done it professionally instead of shooting him in the public square. But expecting Donald Trump to stick to formalities is like expecting a dog to meow or a cat to bark or Chris Matthews to make sense. Let's face it, there's no downtime in this administration. Imagine if the movie Jaws only had shark attacks, no character development, just characters being eaten. That's this White House. There's no off switch. He's our Spinal Tap president, where everything is always set to 11. And maybe one day, but maybe one day, he might realize you can't be on DEFCON 5 all the time. Of course, that'll be when he invents DEFCON 6. So I've talked about, Dana, this idea, you don't have to be in a prison of two ideas. It doesn't have to be treasonous or absolutely wonderful. It could have been that the firing was correct, but kind of tacky. I mean...
Right, and at the time it was interesting because you've used this concept of being allowed to have two competing ideas, and right here in my notes I wrote two competing thoughts.
Right.
That you can believe that James Comey needed to go from the FBI, but you can also believe that this was handled poorly and that it leads to more interest. If they thought this was going to put the Russia story away, it actually just lit the fire under it, turned up the flame on it, legitimately or not. That's what it did. And expecting abnormalities from the White House, absolutely fine. But expecting that the coverage is not also going to be ratcheted up is unreasonable.
Yeah, and also the coverage helps everybody. It lifts all boats. So there's...
Including the Democrats. There's a reason they're going overboard and overreacting. Yeah. Because they're raising a lot of money and trying to figure out a way to get back on their feet.
So I want to... take your comment and position it to Jesse. If he wanted the Russian story to go away, firing an investigator wouldn't be the way to do it. But he must have been aware of that. Of course he would know that would do that, but he did it anyway. Is there some kind of plan that we're not seeing, that he's actually got something up his sleeve?
Yes, it's a grand plan that we all can't see. I don't think he cared about the optics because I don't believe he thinks there's a Russian scandal. So then why cater to it? Right. And everybody likes to say, you know, he's not a normal president. Well, America didn't want a normal president. Right. That's why we elected Donald Trump, because normal hasn't been working for a lot of people. And let's remember, people sent Trump to Washington to say, you're fired. He had a hit show about this. Everybody in America loves watching people get fired. Yes, it wasn't like the classiest way to do it, but I think this sends a message to a lot of haters out there, even in the federal government right now. You better watch your back or you're going to get canned. Let's also remember, Comey works for us. We don't work for Comey, so if he's doing a bad job, let him go.
Yeah, I don't think that's my point. Is that I think Democrats and Republicans both wanted him to go, Kimberly. But now the Democrats are apoplectic about it, which is, again, it's team sport politics. That you change your mind depending on who's on power.
Well, they'd be super upset if all of a sudden Donald Trump said, okay, you know, I believe in climate change and global warming. It's like, whoa, yeah.
Well, that's about to happen.
Yeah, well, you never know. So the point is,
wait till next week.
He evaluates the situation and he makes a decision. So he had evidence presented to him by someone who, you know, had almost near unanimous support in getting in, right, to say, listen, this is something that we think that the president needs to act on. He's entrusted those two individuals, his AG and his deputy AG, to do that investigation, to bring him the evidence and the recommendation. The president followed that recommendation. The problem that people are having here is they don't like it, the Democrats, when he does something that they actually wanted, and then they feel like they should be against him regardless. So it's an issue of optics and it's an issue of process. Was the right process followed in terms of how to handle this? Perhaps you give the guy a call. Okay, you can maybe object to that. I don't really hear anybody saying that Jim Comey was doing, you know, a bang-up, stand-up job where this was somebody that we were saying this is the shining example of the FBI and the director at its best. No, both sides were objecting to the way that he handled himself, and I certainly, as I said, as a former prosecutor, object him overstepping his grounds and making, it's not his decision as to whether or not an indictment should be brought. He simply is to present just the facts, ma'am. And then what he did instead was, being judge, jury, executioner, usurped the power of the then Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and tried to make the decision for her and tell us all how it was going to be, and that's just wrong.
You know, Juan, do you think Jesse has a point about the fact that Trump didn't care about the optics with Russia? Because it seems that's the thing that everybody on your side, the communist left, has been saying, that like clearly this was to impede a Russian investigation. That's the obvious thing you would think, which makes me think, A, he didn't care, or B, he's got something else going on cooking up there in that impulsive brain of his.
Well, I think actually the reporting today suggests that he didn't anticipate all the blowback.
That's true.
Right.
So he didn't have a plan, and he didn't see that he's going to need a plan.
Right.
So, but the thing about it is when I listen to Kimberly say, oh, well, this is what the Democrats want, or I hear Greg Gutfeld said, oh, it's sort of benevolence. I think you said bipartisan benevolence.
Yes, compassionate, conservative.
I have two thoughts. One is, boy, there are a lot of Republicans out there saying, hey, I'm troubled by what I'm hearing. A lot of Republicans out there saying, oh, well, maybe we need a special prosecutor here, right?
They want to
and I hear people like Jason Chapin saying to the Justice Department, hey, maybe your Inspector General should look into this firing. I hear Jeff Flake saying no acceptable rationale for firing at this time. Richard Burr saying, the Republican head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Comey's firing is a loss for the nation. Charles Krauthammer on Fox News.
Now, who is he?
A little guy, comes around once a week.
Okay.
But Charles said, guess what? This is inexplicable that you would fire him now. So Kimberly says, oh, the Democrats wanted him out back in July. Well, that was July. And nobody says he was doing a bad job investigating the Russia issue.
They take issue with the timeline as to the timing of it. But nevertheless, you know, Dianne Feinstein and Clapper have both come out and said there is no evidence of collusion.
There's an ongoing investigation, Kimberly.
Okay, is what I said untrue?
That there's an ongoing investigation?
Both of those things are true.
So the point is, that was the information that we have up to this point, right? That there was no evidence of collusion. So what you're suggesting is some kind of like conspiracy by the president to remove Comey, so then therefore the Russian investigation, collusion, just disappears in the Senate.
Let me just say, I am not talking about...
But that's asinine, because that's not going to happen.
I mean, let me respond
Comey gone doesn't erase it like, you know, the magic marker eraser.
No, but what he did was he decapitated, to use the language I read today, decapitated the man who's the head of the agency that's pursuing the investigation.
So what he actually might have done is made it worse for himself.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Maybe.
But what he actually might have done, inadvertently and not meaning to, is made it worse.
Yeah.
Because a special prosecutor is maybe not necessary, but if that's the direction that people are headed. But interestingly, the Hill isn't the place that makes that decision's made at the Justice Department.
The Justice Department's not going to appoint a special prosecutor, and usually special prosecutors, don't they look at criminal issues? This is a counterintelligence investigation, so there's not going to be a special prosecutor.
Well, we don't know.
So you can put that to bed.
We don't know.
It's a pipe dream. You can't cover up a scandal that doesn't exist.
Well,
Where's the scandal?
Because there's...
Where's the scandal?
Before the police are
What collusion took place between Trump and Russia?
What we know today, news for the top of the show, the federal grand jury subpoenas to Flynn associates, right? Congressional subpoena to the Treasury's criminal division for financial information.
You're
on
looking
Trump and
for a
his associates.
scandal instead of how most scandals happen in Washington when there's something that went wrong, like targeting a Tea Party or selling guns to Mexico and have them kill a border agent. And then there's the cover-up and the investigation.
They only like scandals if it involves Republicans.
Right.
We've learned that. They went nuts for Watergate, and since that, anything that ever comes up is nothing.
Benghazi.
Yeah, Benghazi, forget about it.